Okay, good morning, everybody. Hello. We have a few people here at least. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CSO Zone, the second year of the CSO Zone. My name is Dan. I'm from Back in Football, and we'll be hosting this area for you, myself and my colleague Ben, if he's here. No, that's a good start. Just a few words from me. CSO, you've seen it written there, is short for Corporate Social Opportunity. It's a concept we've launched with SoccerX to talk about the good that football can do, but also link between the business of football and the community of football. We've recognized with SoccerX the disjoint in this sector, and what this zone is all about is interactivity with you as the delegates. We've got some fantastic projects and booths around here to come and interact and talk with, and you'll be hearing some incredible panel discussions, and we really want you guys to share in that and be a part of it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first panel, entitled The Challenges of Mega Sporting Events, and I'm going to pass you on to Dr. Marianne Meyer from Terra des Hommes, the project manager of Children Win. Marianne, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Welcome, and thanks a lot for this nice introduction. Welcome to SoccerX, and welcome to the panel here. I would like to start to present the people here in the panel, the speakers. I would like to start with, on my left, with Alexander Koch. He is deputy head of the corporate communication department at FIFA, and he studied economics. He worked in marketing. He was for a while focusing on track and fields, I read. And he was closely involved in the organization of the 2006 World Cup in Germany in different areas. And when we talk about mega sporting events, Alexander Koch participated in one. Not in football, but in rowing. 1992 in Barcelona, he was rowing for the Swiss team. So he has a double citizenship, is that right? Okay, so this is... Welcome, Alexander Koch. Thank you. The next panelist is Lucy Amos. She is a research fellow at the Institute of Human Rights and Business. She's based in London, but it's an international organization. She's the author of this report here. There are some copies there. So it's entitled Striving for Excellence, Mega Sporting Event and Human Rights. Recommendable, so it's also downloadable, so I recommend it. She has also several publications on migration, on workers' rights, on business and human rights. She also collaborated with the UN Special Representative Ruggie on these famous principles, but we're going to hear more about that. I think it's really, really great to have you here, so welcome, Lucy. The third panelist on my right comes from Switzerland, from Zurich. He's the spokesperson of Solidar Suisse, an NGO. He's going to talk about it also a bit later. He's also a web specialist, and he has a master in international relations with a special focus on economics and human rights. So this is the panel for today's discussion. Before we get started, I would like to introduce Terre des Hommes. So it's hard to pronounce in English, so we say TDH, it's easier. And we prepared a presentation, if this is possible to show. So TDH, that's the organization, and our campaign is called Children Win. Children Win is, TDH, like we are a child rights organization. We are active in more than 68 countries, and we currently run over 840 projects in these 68 countries, basically around the globe. Founded in 1960 in Switzerland, so we are around for a while. And the title Children Win, so we define children as anyone under the age of 18, so that's why we don't say children and youth and so on. It's according to the United Nations definition. Just to show you the structure of TDH, so this is the federation, And as you can see, we have 11 member organizations in Spain, Italy, Luxembourg, France, Germany, and so on. So it's quite international. So these are the organizations running these projects I just mentioned. The Federation has 2 campaigns. The first one, it's called Destination Unknown, Protect Children on the Move. So this is basically about the huge topic right now about refugees, about migration. The campaign was launched 4 years ago, so it's not a kind of an opportunistic thing. It's really, really important that this is taken care of. The second topic is Children Win. So it's on it's on this level that it runs all across these 11 member organizations that I showed you, the Children Win campaign. And it's about changing the game of mega sporting events. What change do we talk about? So change in sport. So this means kind of safeguarding, like ethics, access to infrastructure and so on. Or is it change through sport? So this would be sport as a tool for equity, for social change, for peace building? Or are we talking about change around sport? And this is basically the focus of Children Win. It's the around, but of course, if we look at it as a kind of in a framework, and we look at it in a human rights framework, this is all interlinked. So we have change in sport, through sport, and around sport. And if you want, Children Win is the around sport, but of course, if you have a mega sporting event and you have, for example, programs running as opportunities for children, they need to be safe, of course, and sport needs to be used as a tool for development. So it's all interlinked, just that this is clarified. We want to give children a voice, so we have several documentary films like Felipe in Brazil, who his home was, he was evicted, the family, because they wanted to build the parking lot for the World Cup. Until today, the parking lot is not built. And he tells his story. It's a short film. Next one. Now it doesn't work anymore. It blocked. Now. So this is Gabriel. It's also about police violence. But we are also giving voices to children that had that took the advantage of opportunities. So, for example, Lindy in South Africa, she was given a scholarship thanks to a project that was launched with the World Cup, and she's now at the university. So our message is basically more of that, more of the good stuff, to increase that, the opportunities, and to reduce and stop the risks and the harm that it does, especially to children, but of course to all people. So now for SoccerX, we have this little album that you can get. So it's about football heroes. It's like be a hero yourself, what you can do. So we have different drawings. So we have now Platini and Rummenigge, but we also, as you can see, Robben, Neymar, Di Maria, Götze. So we try to cover all generations, all continents. And these pictures were drawn by artists around, like volunteer artists. And you can get these at our pod over there. And it's like what sport heroes can do. And there is also this section about business hero. And this is then the focus, that business hero, to protect them from forced eviction, for example, police violence, and protect children from sexual exploitation and so on. So this is, of course, also the other side of the game that we want to raise your attention to. So this was a short overview on Terre des Hommes and Children Win. And I'm really want to stop here to have the panel speaking. And to round this up, I would like to show a teaser, a short film as introduction. And I would like to ask then the panelists, like, the impressions, if it's somehow reflecting the views, if they have kind of, if they are opposing somehow feelings, and how it's relating to maybe their organizations. So, John?
Something big was coming to our country. Something that would bring us all together as a nation. There were bulldozers everywhere. We couldn't wait for the games to start.
234 days away from the 2010 FIFA World Cup.
In the middle of all the excitement, bad things started to happen to me and my family. We were forced to move to a place far away. It felt like we were being left out of all the fun.
Vem aí um grande evento para o nosso país. Estamos todos empolgados. Mal podemos esperar para encontrar com nossos heróis. Mas coisas ruins estão acontecendo na nossa comunidade. Eles não estão ouvindo quando a gente diz que não quer sair das nossas casas.
People think we're just kids, so they ignore us. But we know what's really happening in our own lives.
Nós vamos contar nossas histórias. Vocês vão ouvir?
Thank you, John. Okay, so about this intro, we have like 2 mics. Maybe Lucy, your first impression, and then we can just...
Is it working? Yes. Okay. Hello, everybody. Yes, I think it's a very powerful video, and it's bringing across. I think it brings across 2 points, which are important points. One is that actually there's a lot of excitement and optimism around football World Cups and mega sporting events like the Olympics and other Commonwealth Games, etc. But there's also a downside, and in a moment I'll look at some of the risks and opportunities in more depth. But I think there are commercial opportunities and there are emotional opportunities, but there are also severe risks, and it's about how we go about trying to address those risks that I think is important. So, yeah.
Yes, welcome from my side as well. Totally agree with you. There are always both sides. And one example that you mentioned before from the child in Rio de Janeiro, I think, who had to leave his house because of a parking lot being built that wasn't built, shows that actually the main reason for closing down this favela also had nothing to do with the World Cup or a need for a parking lot, but they just wanted maybe commercial interests or whatsoever, and they wanted to close it down. So what I think is important is transparency, and that is what we will ask as well from future bidders. As of 26, that's the next World Cup we will allocate, complete transparency in how the host want to realize the construction of the whatever they need to construct. And that is already started with the Olympic bids that you saw from Berlin and Hamburg, where they had to publicize everything. Here we want to build a road, there we want to close down an environmental area because we need something for sailing. So everything on the table so that the public and the NGOs and everybody can have a say on that. And if then later on something happens which they didn't put in the plans, then there's something wrong and one can act. So transparency, I think, is the key to avoid this.
Thank you. This was already a kind of solution-oriented approach, so thank you. It was already... No, it's okay. It's good, I mean, to offer kind of a possible path to take. So maybe your reaction to the film and how this reflects what your organization also tries to do?
Well, hello. My reflection on the film, it shows in the first period the really transformative force of mega sporting events and of the World Cup, and also it shows in the destiny of individuals, of kids that are confronted to kind of overwhelming power and that their life is changing in the long run, and that there are really individual tragedies happening in the context of mega sporting events. That's my first impression. Our organization is focusing on these on problems like this, but also on workers' rights in the context of the build-up of World Cups, and also on the challenge for developing countries and what could be done much better by organizations like FIFA or the IOC.
Thank you, Ivan. So After this round, I would like to identify, we said there are risks and opportunities, and this is quite abstract. I asked Lucy to go a bit more in depth. What kind of risks and what kind of opportunities? And when? So this is also one thing that it's not just during a mega sporting event. So it's the whole kind of cycle that she tries to identify these kind of risks and also give some flesh to the bone, I would say. And it's also drawn from the report I just mentioned. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Marianne. Hi, everybody. So just very quickly, my organization called the Institute for Human Rights and Business is a global impartial think tank. We have offices in London, Washington, DC, Brussels, Geneva, Nairobi, Bogota, and Yangon in Myanmar. And we focus on the interface between commercial activity, business activities, and human rights globally. And we work very closely around the world with governments, business, civil society, unions, and grassroots groups. In 2013, we published the report, Striving for Excellence, Mega Sporting Events and Human Rights. And this was based on quite a lot of detailed research and analysis. It includes an analysis of both the human rights risks and opportunities across the whole mega sporting events life cycle. So we're talking everything from the bid to host the event right through to the post-event legacy. And in addition to that, it also talks about, it offers some recommendations for all the different actors that are involved in hosting a mega sporting event. So the sports federations like FIFA, UEFA, and the IOC, but also the roles and responsibilities of the host governments, the local organizing committees, the event organizers, sponsors, broadcasters, and all the companies involved in helping to stage a World Cup or an Olympics. We feel very strongly that sport, it represents some of the highest human ideals. It represents solidarity and fair play. It brings people together from all different walks of life on a level playing field. But the problem is that, and there are many opportunities associated with this. So in terms of the human rights side of things, those opportunities include job creation, new skills and opportunities for young people and otherwise marginalized groups. They include potentially new subsidized social housing, boosts to tourism, changing attitudes to people with disabilities and women in sport, new urban leisure spaces, and increased sporting activity. So there's a lot of good that can come out of these events. Unfortunately, rather too often in recent years, but probably over the last few decades, there have been challenges with these events. And this occurs, as I said, across the whole life cycle. So at the host bidding, planning, and land development stages, there have been, not just recently, but over many, many years, there have been cases of forced evictions. In Atlanta that happened, it's happened in Beijing, and most recently in Brazil and also in New Delhi for the Commonwealth Games. People have been removed forcibly from their homes, residents removed from informal settlements in South Africa, and then there are disputes around the rehousing and relocation of those communities that often arise. Then in the construction of the stadia and the venues, there are often workplace deaths, and these have taken place, as I say, in New Delhi, in Beijing. There's been a huge amount of reportage of the accidents and deaths in Qatar in the run-up to the World Cup in 2022. And also across with the Olympics as well. There are workplace accidents and injuries, and in particular, migrant workers has been shown to be especially vulnerable. They're often subject to effectively modern-day slavery. They may be denied their passports and wages, and in many instances are particularly vulnerable to other forms of exploitation. And this has happened not only in Qatar, but also in Beijing and in Sochi. Also in the supply chain for the sporting goods, for the merchandise, for the footballs, there have been a number of campaigns that have identified examples of sweatshop labor and child labor. And then during the event time itself, there have been the harassment of homeless people, the exploitation of migrant workers in the hospitality sector, constraints on the right to protest. So in Brazil, we saw tear gas used against protesters during the Confederations Cup, but also during the World Cup. And then there's the concern around racial and homophobic chanting amongst the fans. And also, in addition to that, targeting of sponsors who may or may not have high ideals and reputations in terms of their own human rights standards. So, whilst there are huge opportunities on the human rights front, there are also major risks. And what we're trying to do, and I hope through this discussion today, is trying to come up with some solutions that are meaningful, but actually have a tangible impact at the end.
Thanks a lot for this overview. So we're gonna put that back on. Yeah. So I think it gave somehow a bit the ground with tangible examples, not only from FIFA World Cups, of course, also from Olympic Games, Commonwealth events. So this is of course, we talk about mega sporting events, but I think since we are at SoccerX, we will mainly focus on FIFA as well, because also we have Alexandra Koch here. So actually, after to hear that, the one thing would be, what can be done about this? Like, who should be doing what? And it also comes always, or very often, the question about this ethical responsibility, about ethically, earning so much money to somehow, if we have the guiding, like the principle of the IOC, the FIFA statutes, claiming, kind of the good things about sport. So my question would be to the influence. So you can say, okay, there is like, on the one side, this kind of, ethical kind of commitment, FIFA principles and so on, or the FIFA statutes. And then what's really, is this compatible? This is one question I would like to ask Alexander.
Yeah, maybe I need to make a little wider frame around it, but the issues or the problems that are discussed here, they are very, very complex and very complicated. So there's never an easy solution to solve all of this. I give you an example, what we are confronted with in the case of South Africa. In '94, when the ANC took over the power in South Africa, they looked at the informal settlements and said, this is not nice how people have to live here. So one goal of the government is to provide each and everybody in South Africa with a decent house, an apartment or a house or whatsoever. Each and everybody, over the next, I don't know how many years. And the minister in charge of this housing is LJl4pkonldg, eventually potential candidate to become FIFA president. And he at the time looked at it and said, we need to close down these informal settlements in order to provide them with a decent living. The question is, was this in the interest of the people or not? But it was a decision by the government. And now we are looking at one informal settlement that was closed down. And in the video it says, because of the World Cup. And that is the point where it's getting difficult for us. It is closed down anyway, or it will be closed down. It has nothing to do with the World Cup because it's a promise from the government. And when we confronted LJl4pkonldg with this issue here, he said, your issue should have been, why didn't we close down more? Because we promised to deliver these houses to them long time ago, and we're actually way behind building these houses. So the actual issue here is that in the interest of the people, and not, does this happen because of the World Cup, and is it our responsibility to prevent this? I mean, we are interested, as everybody else, that our event has positive effects and not negative effects. But I think it's simplified to say this was closed down because of the World Cup, or like the example you had with the parking lot in Brazil. And that's why this is so complex. So for us to say, you need to act on something that actually is just happening at the same time, but is not in clear relation to it. That's why I'm coming back again to transparency. It would be good to know in advance, what does the organizing committee or a country have to do in order to deliver the World Cup? Put everything on the table and tell how many informal settlements you have to close down or how many streets you have to build. And then it can be discussed before a country is actually even bidding.
I'm putting this statement. Thank you to Ivan. Is it trendy to do kind of blaming FIFA? Is it kind of an opportunism? Could that be, thing to say, okay, there is, for example, real estate speculations. We want to get rid of the people anyway, and then the World Cup is coming. Oh, what a nice opportunity to somehow, is this a trend you could also observe?
Well, at the moment, I guess there's a kind of inflation of blaming FIFA in different fields, but this is probably already a bit behind the trend. But it's not. I guess when you're looking a bit more deeply in activities around mega sporting events, it's just a duty to criticize organizations that have or like the FIFA that has makes benefits, for example, out of the World Cup in 2014 of $2 billion, and then you see these things that happen in the context of World Cups. And then you can say, well, this would have happened anyway. But then again, we can see what have been the bidding criteria. Actually, there have not been any social criteria for World Cups in the past, and also for Russia and Qatar. And now, slowly things get moving. But then to say, well, it's all about transparency is by far not enough. It's about actually really defining criteria that from the side of the organizer, and not just saying, well, tell us what you do and then we'll evaluate it. But it's really giving exact criteria in forefront, and that's what has not happened until now. And I guess it's, yeah, I mean, human rights have been a topic not only in the 2015.
Thank you. Taking that back, you mentioned Russia. So the next World Cup is in Russia. The next one is going to be in Qatar. Now Beijing has been assigned. I found this article in the Sport Executive magazine. The title is "When Sport Falls in Love with Dictatorships." And I would also like to remember what Jérôme Valk, the Secretary General of FIFA, said about that. He said, it's much easier to work with countries where democracy is not really working. And he explicitly said, Putin, for 2018, that it's easier to work with heads of states that can make a decision than to work like in Germany. He took that as an example, with different levels of different levels of the decision. And when he said it, he said it's a bit crazy to say that, but he still said it. So, Lucy, what about the trend that you are seeing? So the European Games, the next ones, so they were in Baku this year, and the next ones are probably, it's not sure yet, to be in Belarus. So if we enumerate this kind of mega sporting events where they are assigned to, it has a bit this impression to say it seems to be easier in autocratic or even dictatorship, at least in environments where human rights are not really big on the agenda. So what is your observation?
I think there's some truth in that, but it can also be overstated. So I think, yes, in recent times, we've seen the European Games in Baku, we've seen Beijing awarded the 2022 Winter Olympics, Russia has the World Cup in 2018, and Qatar has the 2022 World Cup. But on the flip side, Tokyo has the 2020 Olympics, and of the applicant cities for the 2024 Olympics, they are predominantly democracies. So it's a mixed picture, and I think what's going to become crucially important, and I think FIFA and in fairness, some of the host governments are starting, and the IOC are starting to recognize this, is that in order for these games to be successful, to have a really good, strong, lasting legacy, there has to be social license. There has to be buy-in from the communities and the peoples in the countries involved. And without that, they're never going to be the success. And I think in the long term, maybe in the short term, it's easier and attractive opportunity and option for some of the organizers to think, oh, well, we can work with Beijing or we can work with Russia because they can deliver an event. There won't be any protests. It'll be nice and easy. But I think in the long term, it's going to become increasingly important to all of these organizations to recognize that they have to have the buy-in from the communities and the workers and all those affected.
Thanks. Yeah.
Can I quickly add something?
Yeah, sure.
I think I agree with both of you, and I also totally agree that in the contract so far, these elements were not covered sufficiently. Actually, that's also the reason why I moved from the real sport rowing to football, because football is going way beyond the sport itself. You can achieve so much more. But when I started in 2002 for the contract for Russia, for Korea and Japan, there was nothing in, not even environmental aspects, absolutely nothing. Just we organized the sporting events. And then slowly it started more and more. Germany, we had the environmental elements. In South Africa, we were confronted with workers' rights issues in the stadia. Then the contracts were already done for Brazil. We worked for Brazil, and we worked on the contracts for Russia and Qatar. They were done in 2009, and now we're working on 26. And there, I agree, transparency is not the only thing, and that's why I can already say, because that is public already, the United Nations Guiding Principles will be a mandatory element of the bidding and hosting agreements. So we are doing a huge step forward, and we are now in the process of defining in more detail how these 26 bidding documents will look like and what kind of requirements there will be in there.
Yeah. Just one quick question, just talking about the progress. Now, for example, FIFA statutes, they say non-discrimination, like really this is one aspect. And they made a lot of progress, or they were very explicit about racism, for example, with campaigns. What about homophobia? Like, I mean, Russia, Qatar, and did you somehow learn from Sochi, from IOC? Do you exchange kind of lessons learned to say, because in the IOC principles, it's even now explicit, for example, sexual orientation, but it's like it's written there, okay, but it's like ignored when attributing, or what can you? This is really somehow a slap in the face of activists to say, okay, it's in there now. It's like it's written, but then still in Russia, if you talk to underage children about homosexuality publicly, you can get arrested. Just as an example, and they will host the Confed Cup, the World Cup, and so on. So.
Yeah, it's a good example, because on Saturday we met with the QFF, that's the Queer Football Fan Associations, homosexual fans from various clubs, mainly Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and England, came together on Saturday in Switzerland, and they discussed all the kind of things, and they will send to us a letter of what they request from us. So we wanted to engage with them and see what else we can do, so that it's not mainly focused on racism, but as it states in the statutes, all kind of discrimination. So of course, also sexual orientation. Whether it's a contradiction or not, our basic idea is always to not exclude anybody. So we're not against boycott. So there is nothing in where a country is being excluded from the right to bid just because a law is somehow, yeah. What we insist, however, is that everything related to the World Cup has to be in line with our statutes. And that's also what Mr. Bach said during the Olympic Games. He guaranteed, if I correctly remember, that all fans, all athletes, and so can behave as they want, and that nothing will happen to them. And that is the same for us. And as I said, we don't believe in exclusion, so we think rather than addressing this, the world will hear about the issues in Russia, but we are definitely insisting on our statutes and values for everything related to the tournament.
Okay, thanks. I would like to come to another. You mentioned the complexity of it. So we have sport governing bodies, we have private companies, it's really complex, and we have sponsors. This is one important aspect. And as we all know, the business of business is business. And with sponsors. This is one part of it. And Solidar, you have one campaign where people can directly send an email to CEOs of FIFA sponsors, so from McDonald's, Adidas, Budweiser, Gazprom, and so on. And the line of the email, so you go to the website of Solidar and directly writes the email and the address of the CEO of these companies, of these sponsors. And the title is Ask FIFA to Change Now. And my question to you, is this successful so far? So what are your results? And what would be somehow the turning point? You know, kind of, do you see that something is changing, and the reaction of the sponsors maybe, if they are kind of getting angry or if they are cooperating?
Well, actually, the email goes to these corporate CEOs, and actually, probably the FIFA would know a bit better how much critique came in the last months towards them from their sponsors. It's hard to really evaluate how much effect there is, but we have 10,000 people that have been signing petitions in the last months, and also several thousand emails that were sent. I guess we can say that there's an effect, but what actually happens from the sponsors towards FIFA is, it was also a bit more about corruption in the last months, and we're working much more on rights of workers, and also we want really to get FIFA to a point where there's monitoring and also sanctions for the non-compliance with working rights in the host countries. So the success, I guess there's a sensitivity of the public towards these topics, but if sponsors are really getting out of contracts, that's not really the point at the moment.
Okay, thanks. I think time is running, so we need to wrap up. I think it has already been mentioned. I'm just gonna take this slide. So for these people who are not really familiar with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, maybe Lucy, if you could just briefly say, why is this relevant, and why is there the chance that, you know, they could somehow make a difference?
Without being too boring or technical, the UN guiding principles came about through consultation over 6 years around the world with business, governments, civil society, unions. They're particularly relevant because they set out human rights responsibilities for the first time, not just for governments, but for companies. And they provide a roadmap for companies. So they provide a roadmap also for commercial activity-driven organizations. So for FIFA, UEFA, for the sponsors, for the event organizers, for all the construction, sports merchandise, all of the companies, they're a roadmap. And what they get into in a way that hasn't existed before is that they ask for all those involved to make a public human rights commitment. They ask for all of the companies involved and all the commercial organizations to carry out risk assessments so they really understand how these events can potentially harm people's human rights. Alexander mentioned earlier that ahead of the South Africa World Cup, there was this issue around the informal settlements. Now, sometimes that is a government responsibility and a government-led activity, and other times there is a place where maybe FIFA or the IOC actually has influence, and it's about understanding those risks and then putting the management systems in place to address those. So systems to make sure that, for example, there are hotlines and complaints mechanisms where things go wrong. And above all, it's about consulting with affected communities. So very often there may be a decision, whether it's taken by the government or the sports governing body, to move people from their land, but there needs to be consultation with the people, and that's one thing that's been seriously lacking so far, and the guiding principles particularly address that point. So we're really pleased that FIFA is now starting to listen to using the guiding principles in their work.
Yeah, thanks. So about the time, I received little signs from the back, so we're about, pretty much, I think, on time. So just to have kind of a closing round about wishes or next steps, very concrete next steps forward. I have like maybe that you could then say from your side. I have one question for you. In Paris, at the Global Forum on Responsible Business Conduct, OECD, FIFA announced the criteria for the bid book 2026 to be published. Then this was a bit postponed, and I wanted to ask, what's the progress done right now, and what is also your plans to somehow, I don't know, do consultations, kind of a broader consultation, or kind of sharing if you have concrete plans, or at what stage is this kind of progress?
Difficult question, because I was asked not to go into detail on the answers, but what I can say, this whole process has been postponed by quite a bit, so we have a lot of time and we will engage. More details I can't give you at this time, but it should be announced, I would say, still this year, definitely.
Yeah. Engage with whom?
Civil society.
Okay. This is recorded, so. Okay, maybe from your side, your next step, or you wish, or kind of next step forward?
Well, the wish is that the FIFA gets also regarding Russia and Qatar is much more involved in safeguarding human rights there, and of course I wish for a better collaboration in a way that there's a dialogue, because what we see is that often still human rights and civil society is conceived as a bit of a problem by FIFA, and I mean I feel it's like they sense that it's something external and disturbing, and now we have to do something, and but in fact in my eyes, if FIFA doesn't get to a point where really they take this to their body, these principles, they will fail, and they will not be able to organize World Cups and mega sporting events in a context of democracy and human rights, and finally they will not find any host countries that are able and willing to organize such a thing, and this will look very bad in the future if this happens.
Maybe
just as an reaction,
yes.
I can how do you say, I can calm you, beruhigen, because we are all civil as well, and there was a clear wish from my management for me to go here. We are starting to engage, and this will happen definitely.
Okay, so to sum up, sorry,
I'm not going to be cut out, but I know she didn't mean that. So really just in terms of our key ask would be that there needs to be more collective action, and it's great that FIFA is taking some leadership position, but there is a role here for the IOC as well, for UEFA, and for all of the different actors, and what we're looking for is some accountable and independent forum where all of these actors can come together, learn from each other, and actually try and take things forward using the guiding principles and other things. And also the other key part is that there be engagement with human rights experts and grassroots groups, because sometimes they have intelligence and information about what's actually happening on the ground that the sports governing bodies are not always aware of, and so there needs to be a lot more dialogue. So yeah. But practical, action-based dialogue.
Okay, so I think dialogue is a good closing word, and practical action, complete transparency, dialogue, consultation on the ground, a participatory approach to tackle the complexity of mega sporting event, and that in the future we will all be able to just enjoy sports to its fullest potential, I would say. So thank you to the panelists, Alexander Koch, Lucy Amos, Ivan Schauwecker, and I give over to Dan for the next session. So please give a hand to this podium, to the speakers here. Thanks.